Al Capone versus Bugs Moran. Al Capone and Bugs Moran were rival mobsters and bootleggers in Chicago during Prohibition. They chose to sell alcohol illegally because of how profitable it was. Because of this, they were constantly at each other's throats over territory. The fighting between the two aided to the fall of the Prohibition era. The Prohibition was enacted in 1920 as a way to prohibit the nation of drunks by banning the creation and sale of alcohol. However, it came with a price. The gangsters of the Prohibition era, who were also called bootleggers, people who illegally made and sold liquor. In the year of 1891, Bugs Moran was born in St. Paul, Minnesota. He went to a private school and fell in with the St. Paul gang. He was arrested 3 times before he turned 21 and made his way to Chicago. In Chicago, he learned under mentor and leader of the North Side Chicago gang, Dean O'Banion. Moran was third in command for the gang, behind Dean O'Banion and Jaime Wise. The North and South Side gangs, with the South being led by Johnny Torrio and Al Capone, were rivals after the North stole some of the South's alcohol trucks. The South Side gang was very mad at the North for stealing the trucks and ordered O'Banion's death. He was killed by Frankie Yale, John Scalise, and Albert Anselmi outside a flower shop he owned. Then the North was mad at the South and had a failed assassination attempt on Johnny Torrio, the South's leader. Torrio was so spooked from the attack that he left Chicago for Sicily, leaving Capone in control of the gang. Al Capone was born in 1899 in Brooklyn, New York City. He was a good student, but dropped out after he had to repeat the 6th grade. His principal hit him, he hit him back, never went back to school again. His father was a barber, and his mother a seamstress. He worked at a bowling alley, befriended Johnny Torrio, married May Coughlin at 19 after they had a child named Albert Francis, and moved to Baltimore, where he worked construction and gained a reputation as a drinker. Torrio invited him to Chicago, and he moved his family immediately to Chicago. At first, the North Side gang had several rackets such as prostitution and gambling, but when the 18th Amendment was enacted in 1920 banning the sale and production of alcohol, they switched to a much more profitable business, bootlegging. When in Chicago, he became second in command to Johnny Torrio for the North Side gang. After Torrio left for Sicily, Capone became the leader of the North Side gang. Most everyone in Chicago loved Al Capone because of all of his kind deeds, such as setting up soup kitchens and giving milk to schoolboys. One of his first acts as leader was assassinating Jaime Wise, leaving Bugs Moran in charge of the North Side gang. Then Moran made 2 assassination attempts on Capone's life, as he was still very mad at them for killing all his friends. The first was a drive-by shooting attempt at Capone. The second was another drive-by shooting attempt while Capone was eating in a hotel lobby. Moran also tried to kill Capone's bodyguards. He captured one and tortured him, and killed him after he got information out of him. Moran almost always had the upper hand on Capone. He was constantly in his head. This was evident in the many attempts Moran made on killing Capone. Although neither Moran nor Capone killed each other, it was very clear the two hated each other a lot. After a $50,000 bounty was placed on his head by Moran, Capone snapped and made an attempt on Moran's life, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. On the day of the massacre, in 1929, 2 of Capone's gang, dressed up as police officers, went into a garage where some of Moran's gang were, and told them to line up against the wall. 4 more of Capone's gang came, and then the 6 of them shot the 7 of Bugs's gang over 90 times. Some were almost cut in half from bullets. Moran, lucky for him, wasn't in the building and didn't die. Capone was obviously the first questioned about the massacre, but luckily for him, he was in Florida during it, so he had a strong alibi. However, the public still believed he did it, and he lost his reputation with them. After this, the police began intensive research to find something to arrest Capone for. In 1931, Capone was arrested for tax evasion and sent to a federal prison in Atlanta for 2 years. He was caught for bribing the prison guards and having certain luxuries in his cell, and was sent to Alcatraz, where he spent 5 years. He was discovered to have dementia and syphilis and went to a mental hospital in Baltimore for 3 years, where he was released in 1942. He died in his mansion in Miami in 1947 of syphilis. Bugs Moran laid low until in 1946 when he tried to rob a bank with his buddies, but they were arrested by FBI agents. He spent 10 years in Leavenworth Federal Prison, but was released 10 years later and arrested again for another bank robbery. He died of lung cancer in prison in 1957. In conclusion, Bugs Moran and Al Capone were great enemies amidst Prohibition. They had a huge impact on society and the rules around alcohol usage. This shows how bad it is to make enemies, and how having enemies can hurt you, like it hurt Capone and Moran, destroying their careers and lives. The conflict and compromise in our project was between the two rivals and the public. Their activities led to the greater compromise of ending Prohibition.